This is not a Mustang. This is a Mustang. And so is this. And I'd even accept this as a Mustang. But not this. This should have never been called a Mustang to begin with. It was perfectly fine to just leave it as the Ford Mach-E. But now that we got that out of the way, this is the GT version of the Ford Mach-E, and it promises to be the fastest and the most exhilarating version to date. So does it achieve that? Let's go for a drive and find out. The Ford Mach-E GT is powered by two electric motors, one in the front axle and one in the back axle. Combined, they have a total output of 480 horsepower and 634 pound-feet of torque. It's very fast. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour gets done in 3.5 seconds, which is insanely impressive considering that this weighs almost 5,000 pounds. This car launches so hard that the front end lifts just a little bit, and you can actually feel in the steering wheel that it gets a little bit lighter. It's almost as though this car wants to take off like an airplane. Maybe that's why it says ground speed on the speedometer instead of just speed. However, there are other electric vehicles with all-wheel drive that can accelerate almost as hard as this one does from a launch. Other variants of the Ford Mach-E, for example, with all-wheel drive. They feel almost the same as this one. But the key difference with this GT is the way that it continues to accelerate really hard when you want to overtake someone on a highway. Let's say, for example, you want to overtake another vehicle when you're doing 100 kilometers an hour or about 60 miles an hour. This GT feels like it accelerates just as hard at that speed as it is at lower speeds. Now, of course, when you go really fast, say Autobahn speeds, it is going to run out of steam. All electric vehicles do in relation to their gasoline-only counterparts. But for most people's needs, this has more than enough power. It is just intoxicating. Of course, you can choose just how much acceleration you want from your right foot, because there are 3 drive modes: Whisper, Engage, and Unbridled. They're pretty much self-explanatory, and they do change how the throttle response is, and also a little bit on how the steering feels. There's also a 4th, semi-secret drive mode called Unbridled Extend. However, that one is meant for track use only. The idea behind it is that it reins in the stability and the traction control and provides you with a more consistent power band. However, it feels like as though it's just pulling back on the power, so you always have a similar amount of power for multiple laps, but it doesn't feel quite as strong as the normal unbridled mode. The GT Performance has a 91 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which can provide a claimed range of 418 kilometers, or about 260 miles. Not too bad for something with this much power. While I had the car on demo, the weather was around 15 degrees Celsius, so with a full charge, the little guessometer was saying that the 100% range was 375 kilometers, or about 230 miles. It is rated for 25.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, but I managed to average around 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers during my time with the car. Ford claims a charge time of just under 11 hours from 0% to 100% with the best level 2 charger available. From a level 3 DC charger, Ford estimates the charging time from 10% to 80% to be around 45 minutes. The Mach-E GT does have regenerative braking, as you would expect from an electric vehicle, and it has 2 modes. There's the normal mode, which is exactly like a gasoline-powered vehicle. So you just lift off the accelerator pedal and you slow down only a little bit. It's kind of like engine braking. The other is one-pedal driving, and it is a true one-pedal mode. You don't have to touch the brake pedal. The brakes on the front axle at least are Brembos, and they are very strong, but they're also quite sensitive, so it's hard to get smooth stops. And because of that, I personally prefer to drive in the one-pedal mode. For a nearly 5,000-pound crossover SUV, the 2022 Mach-E GT is a fun and good handling vehicle. The batteries are mounted in the floor like many other EVs, and they provide a low center of gravity. This makes the Mach-E planted around corners. However, the torque from the motors can still get the back end of the car to step out of line. If you're aggressive with the accelerator pedal as the car exits a corner, the rear end rotates and wants to overtake the front. In other words, it wants to spin out. But the stability control system will intervene and gently straighten out the car. If you're a bit more gentle with the accelerator inputs, the Ford Mach-E GT is a fun car to drive on a twisting road. By no means does it feel light and agile when compared to its gasoline counterparts, because the weight of the batteries is always going to be felt. But the steering is direct and has just enough weight behind it. It does feel artificial and almost like a video game steering wheel, but that's the norm for EVs. The GT Performance receives 245 45R20 summer tires for more grip. These tires do indeed provide a bigger footprint and aid in making the GT feel more planted than other variants of the Ford Mach-E. Starting with the ride comfort, the GT comes with MagnaRide dampers. They're adaptive suspension. And of course they do change firmness depending on the drive mode that you're in. It is noticeable, and I will say this, it's actually not too bad even if you decide to stay in unbridled mode while driving on city streets. They do a great job of smoothing out the bumps so you don't really feel them too harshly into your back and into your bum. As for noises inside the cabin, there is some fake, engine noises, if you want to call them that, getting pumped in through the stereo system, but you can turn them off completely if you want to. If you do that, then wind noise at highway speeds is pretty much negligible, but road noise from these summer-only tires is much more evident. It's not too loud, but you definitely notice it all the time. Now inside the Ford Mach-E GT, it looks pretty much the same as all the other variants of the Mach-E. So there are some similarities to other Ford models, but most of it is bespoke to the Ford Mach-E. So the biggest draw to your eyes is obviously going to be the 15.5-inch touchscreen. It is running on Sync 4 infotainment system, and it does allow for wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. It's pretty easy to use, and I haven't had any issues in terms of connectivity between it and my smartphone. However, I do want to complain a little bit about the climate controls because they're always going to be at the very bottom of the touchscreen, but they are part of the touchscreen. So when you're driving, it can be a little bit distracting to use these controls. I much prefer physical controls. However, speaking of physical controls, you do have them right here on the steering wheel, as well as for the power windows and power locks. But this being an electric vehicle, it does have to have one or two gimmicks, and one of them is with the door release. It's just a pull of this tab and it opens. And on the outside, it's just a button push and then the door opens. In terms of space inside the Mach-E, I am 6'4" and legroom is not an issue, and neither is headroom. These seats are a little bit different in their design compared to other Mach-E models, but I still find them pretty comfortable. They have nice bolsters, and the center is in a non-leather fabric, so they really hold you in tight. In the back, behind my 6'4" driving position, my knees are touching up against the back of the front seat, but they don't feel squished at all. However, with this seat in its lowest position, as it is right now, my feet don't really have a whole lot of space. And it's the same story with headroom. I can feel my hair brushing up against the edges of this moonroof, the headliner specifically, but it's not too bad. Speaking of the moonroof, it is tinted, so it shouldn't let too much light in when it's a bright and sunny day. However, there is no shade and it doesn't open. Other stuff in the back, well, the floor is completely flat, which is the norm for all of these electric vehicles. There's a USB-A and USB-C port. The cup holders are right here, and that's about it. One thing is, if you are looking for heated seats in the back, you're not going to find them, because even on this GT trim, they're just not available. As for the trunk, it can accommodate 840 liters of space with the rear seats up. Fold them down and that number increases to 1,685 liters. However, this being an electric vehicle, it comes with a frunk, or front trunk. It is small, but at least it's something. The frunk has a capacity of 133 liters. The 2022 Ford Mach-E GT starts at $85,995 Canadian, with this demo vehicle being equipped to $89,340 Canadian. Unfortunately, Ford's American website does not allow for a build and price feature of the Mach-E at the time that I'm putting this video together, so I cannot provide the as-is equipped price in US dollars. As well, there are government rebates, but they vary by region, so check your local dealership for details. But for that amount of money, the Ford Mach-E GT does come almost as well equipped as one would expect. So it does have the usual gadgets like satellite navigation, wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, wireless phone charging pad, heated front seats, heated steering wheel, a power liftgate, the fixed moonroof, LED headlights, push button start, keyless entry, automatic climate control, just, the usual stuff. However, it doesn't have things like ventilated front seats, a head-up display, or the heated rear seats. Other cars that cost as much as this usually tend to have them, but this GT doesn't have them. Arguably, one of the biggest gadgets is the new Blue Cruise hands-free driving system. This is Ford's version of Super Cruise from GM. It allows for hands-free driving on certain roads throughout Canada and the United States, primarily highways. However, it doesn't perform quite as well as Super Cruise. On certain sections of highways, usually sharper corners, the system will ask you to retake control until you are past that corner, where it will retake steering control again. As well, it does not know how to perform lane changes like GM's Super Cruise system. Maybe in the future, Ford can update Blue Cruise with over-the-air updates, but for now, it feels more rudimentary when compared to GM's Super Cruise. On the safety side of things, the 2022 Ford Mach-E received a top safety pick from the IIHS. As standard, the Mach-E receives all of the available driver and safety aids that are in the Ford catalog. The only option is the Ford Copilot 360 Assist 2.0, which includes Active Park Assist and Blue Cruise. So, to reiterate, this is not a Mustang. It should have never been called a Mustang to begin with. However, this GT definitely performs like a Mustang should. But at $90,000 Canadian, it is a really hard yellow pill to swallow, especially if you compare it against the Tesla Model Y. With that one, you can get similar performance to this for a similar price, but you get more driving range and you get access to Tesla's supercharger network, which is the best that there is. So although I really like this Mach-E GT and I had a lot of fun with it and I want to keep it for myself, $90,000 Canadian is a lot of money. However, if you want to know more about this 2022 Ford Mach-E GT, I wrote a more detailed review of it over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up here. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and see you in the next video.